Until 1972, the NCAA restricted freshman athletes from playing varsity sports. That meant perhaps the most heralded basketball recruit of all time, Lou Alcindor from Power Memorial High School in New York City, would play for the UCLA freshman team in the 1965-66 season. The future Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, arguably the greatest basketball player ever, was asked many years later, after he had scored more points than anyone in the history of the sport, who was the best player that ever guarded him? Or maybe they asked him who was the most physical, or perhaps it was who was the dirtiest. Anyhow, the 3-time Collegiate Player of the Year and 6-time NBA champion replied, Bob Klein, USC freshman team. Klein, a football recruit from St. Monica High School in Santa Monica, was playing freshman basketball for the Men of Troy after a meager 4-game Frosh football season. Had the NCAA allowed Alcindor to play varsity basketball and Klein to play varsity football, we might never have known who was the greatest defender of the greatest scorer in the history of basketball. I'm a Venice, California-born, Los Angeles-based sports fan, one that has played, coached, announced, and promoted sports my whole life. My love affair with sports started in my own backyard and has led me to this podcast. Thanks to the support of the Amateur Athletic Union in East Bay, I'm excited to bring you Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. Hello, sports historians. Welcome to Audio Video Podcast, episode number 59 of Sports Stories with Denny Lennon. This is part 1 of our 4-part series with a standout tight end from the 1967 USC National Championship football team. He went on to a stellar NFL career with the Los Angeles Rams and the San Diego Chargers before an even more successful career as a business and family man. He's a lifelong Pacific Palisades resident. He's Bob Klein. Before we go any further, it's time to introduce the 2010 first team all-conference basketball player from City College of San Francisco, the same school, by the way, that O.J. Simpson was an all-conference selection in football for some 45 years earlier, before he joined Bob Klein at USC. Here's Marley Rice.
Wow, so me and OJ are like on the same level of sports, pretty much, is what you're saying.
Kind of, I guess.
Right.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, besides listening to us on all the audio platforms, be sure to follow us on YouTube. You can find us at youtube.com/SSDL. You can also watch us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 a.m. on cable TV on LA 36, and that's Pacific time. And you can also watch us on your mobile device on Roku, Fire, Apple TV by downloading our app at thsn.app. And all this info, you can find it on our website at sportstoriesdl.com.
Nice. Remember, my Twitter handle is at SportsStoriesDL. Hopefully, you'll follow me there. I'm going to be doing a lot of polls, Bob Klein-themed polls, USC, Rams, Chargers, all kinds of fun stuff. I do want to make a note. This was a very special interview for me. Bob Klein was a childhood hero of mine. I often put on my Rams jersey and pretended to be Klein catching passes from the Rams quarterback James Harris in my own backyard. In this episode, we cover his years growing up in the Palisades, playing and working at the beach, his time at St. Monica High School, and then at the University of Southern California, catching the passes and throwing the blocks that paved the way for O.J. Simpson to win the Heisman, the Trojans to win the national championship in '67, and the team to appear in 3 Rose Bowls. We once again were fortunate enough to shoot this interview at Casablanca Restaurant in Venice. Our most sincere thanks to Carlos Haro Sr., Carlos Haro Jr., and the staff. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, hopefully you'll enjoy the cinematic look courtesy of Chris Allport and Bob McCall of the Allport Productions Alpha Command Unit. Okay, from Venice, California, here's my interview with Bob Klein. Please note this interview was recorded on November 13th, 2020. We were just talking about coming here to Casablanca, and it had been a while for you.
Been a long time.
Yeah.
For a few years. I came down in a school bus and turned left at this corner on Lincoln down to Penmar, because that's when I was at St. Monica's. That's where we actually practiced. We did not have still don't have a field.
Still don't have a field.
So we came down there and got it done, and we did win some football games. So that didn't hold us back at all.
I love it.
And then I've been here through the years, of course, a number of times, and it's a great restaurant.
It is a great restaurant. Now, as we know, Wikipedia is always right about everything.
Yes.
But I read you were born in Southgate. Is that correct?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
In a clinic.
Okay.
No hospital.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, my mom was native-born Angelino, and she met my dad during the Second World War at Douglas Aircraft.
Okay.
My dad flunked out of flight school, so he wanted to be associated with planes, so he started building planes and met my mom.
Okay.
And that's how it all started. And in our family, we got a big tradition of volleyball. We love volleyball.
Sure.
I'm sure we'll talk about that. But
Yep.
that's where my mom and dad met. They met down at Sereno on the beach in
is that
Santa
right?
Monica.
Oh.
They both lived in apartments up on the Palisades, and you go down the incline. That's where you ended up.
Oh, wow.
And so my whole childhood was spent. That's why I got skin damage, sun damage all over.
I know.
Was
we all
on the
do.
beach. That was what we did. So.
How long until you moved into the Palisades? How old were you?
Well, fortunately enough, I had a contract with the Rams right when I got out of college.
Okay.
And so Joanne, my wife, current wife, we started first grade together.
First grade.
At Corpus Christi in the Palisades. And so having a professional contract, so we got married right after graduation.
Okay.
And started a family. We got pregnant on the honeymoon and had our first daughter 9 months and 6 days after our wedding day.
So it's
It's our only daughter, by the way. So
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes, I know her. Is Corpus Christi always been on that same location? Is it always right?
Yeah.
And I think were your parents part of the
They were part of the
founding families?
original, founding group of parents and parishioners that
That is
started
great.
that. And at the time, there was evidently a couple pieces of property that were available from the archdiocese, and one was that site where they're on. The other one was where St. Matthew's is, up
Sure.
the Bienvenida, which is a
Bienvenida.
beautiful piece of property.
Yeah, it is.
Big grounds. But at that time, that was kind of outside of the Palisades because things didn't really go too much further than Bienvenida, Las Casas, and some of those streets. So they wanted to be in the center of town. So
Sure.
I grew up on Lower Bienvenida and spent my whole life in the Palisades, and that's the only place I've ever lived.
That's it. Yeah, that's
Yes.
it.
So we got married and had, because I signed a contract, I had money to buy a house.
Oh, that's
Stayed there.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So you're at Corpus Christi, I would suppose. Was the YMCA around then? Because I know that played a part in a lot of young people's lives, but I don't know if it was
No,
around.
it hadn't started yet. The only thing we did have was we had the new Palisades Park.
Sure.
And it had a gymnasium, the same old gymnasium that's there
Yeah.
now. So the things that we had really kind of kept us busy were Little League Baseball. We had that.
Yeah.
And there was a basketball league there. No high school yet. So that was pretty much what kids did.
Yeah.
Besides the beach.
Besides the beach.
The beach was a big part of our lives.
Yeah, you know, I when I talked to Sam Lagana, who you of course know,
Yep.
we talked about that. Like it was similar in Venice growing up. You got a couple years on me, but similar to Palisades, you spent so much time down at the beach.
Yeah.
You just playing and recreating.
So the way I met a lot of kids that I ended up going to high school with and stuff was I worked at Nini's at the beach.
Nini's.
So Nini's, it was Nini's famous weenies.
Okay.
But Austin Nienhauser was a guy who my sister, who's 2 years older than me, worked for, along with a bunch of kids from St. Monica's, and so she said, "Do you want to go to work?" And you get paid $1.50 an hour.
Hey, that's
It was
pulling a little
it
bit
was
in
a
those
lot
days.
then. It really was
Yeah.
a lot then. And I learned to be a short order cook.
Okay.
And so till this day I can still cook.
Oh, that is a good.
You bet.
That's a
Yeah.
good one. I wish I would have kept my skills because I worked in a bunch of restaurants too before I settled in
Yeah.
coaching, but I somehow lost my skills along the way.
So it was better for me to be behind the grill because when I first started there, I was at the window, and as soon as your friends find out you're at the window,
That's the worst.
they
keep
want
on,
everything.
"Come on, put an extra- put an extra one in."
Yeah, sure.
I'm curious. So you're playing ball, and I'm guessing you're playing what other youth leagues and so forth. Was there anybody who took like an interest in you, coached your teams, who kind of said, hey, you're pretty good at this?
Well, the street that I grew up on, Lower Bienvenida, every single house was full of kids. And so young families. And it just so happens that on either side of our house were two guys, Dick Hay and Woody Bray. And these guys played at Santa Monica College.
Okay.
And at Samo High.
Okay.
And so I was a big gangly kid, and I would babysit for them.
Okay.
And when they found out that I, was a freshman and started to play football, I'd go over to babysit, and I get 15 minutes of what an arm shiver was and how to get the guy off of you.
Great.
And so I had that kind of upbringing.
That's so.
And I was big, so then naturally they're going to turn me into a football player. But the football has been fantastic, but I've loved every sport that I've ever been involved with.
Yeah.
Played some basketball, a lot of basketball. And baseball. Couldn't hit a curve, so that baseball was not going to be a long career
You're not
for
the
me.
only
No,
one.
I just didn't want that thing hitting me in the
separates
head.
people, isn't it?
What if it doesn't break, kind of thing, So anyway,
Like just sitting on
it
that
was
fastball.
a neighborhood and a community where there was tons of kids. Families had one car; they didn't have two cars. We did a lot of things at the beach, a lot of things in the community, and it was a great place to grow up.
What made you choose St. Monica? I would imagine, was Loyola High School even in your consideration?
Loyola was. There were 65 kids in our graduating class. That's
65.
That's how many kids there were in a
Right.
first grade. Can you imagine being a teacher trying to
Wait,
handle 65
in
kids?
You didn't have split classes?
Nope.
One class.
65
kids.
Yeah. And that's why I think it was okay if the teachers were allowed to put their hands on you, pull their ears, do whatever it might take, But by the time, of course, we got to junior high school, we were much better behaved. In that class, there was no Santa Monica freeway.
Okay.
So how do you get to Loyola on Venice, way downtown?
Okay.
And there were
that would be
only,
it, right?
out of our class of, let's say 30, 35 guys, there were only, I think, 3 that went to Loyola because their dads worked downtown Los Angeles. And,
they could-
and the way you got there was Olympic or Venice or one of those.
Olympic or Venice.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so going to St. Monica's was convenient. The number 9 bus, blue bus, ran back and forth. And also, frankly, the way I got home back and forth was hitchhiking, which you wouldn't even hear that now. But I mean, I could stand right down there on the corner of Chautauqua and PCH, and everybody knew me. I mean, I stood there for 2 minutes before I got taken and dropped off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, the bus and that kind of thing, and no cars and so forth. So it's great.
So it's wild when you get to high school too, because you meet people and you don't realize it then. You realize it now that you'll know the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And they come from the various Catholic schools, and St. Monica. I suppose at that time was St. Bernard just starting.
They had, and they were our big rival.
Okay.
So the teams that were really competitive, Bishop Montgomery was just starting, and we played them in basketball quite a bit.
Okay.
Alamany
Had
some good
Valley.
athletes.
Mm-hmm.
But St. Bernard's was really the big one. That
Angeles League at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Angeles League. Yeah.
Yeah.
That still remains a little
and
bit.
we played we played some teams every once in a while. We played Mater Dei when they were, I think, about the only Catholic high school in Orange County.
Yeah.
And we played them and just got played in the Santa Ana Bowl down there.
You got to imagine how many kids they were polling at that time. I wanted to remind you of. So this is the St. Monica gym.
Yes, look at
Isn't that kind of fun?
Yeah, let me I gotta get my peepers on here. Oh yeah! Oh my God!
Look at that St. Monica gym,
Look
boy.
at that leap! Yeah, that's
Not
good.
bad.
Hey, look at those jerseys, huh?
Knocking down that jersey. Knocking down that jumper.
Yeah.
And then here's a good pose. I like this one.
Well, who is that young man?
And I noticed we
what
went
number I had
to
on that.
dig in here and find you, but it looked like you got cropped out of the picture over here on the side.
I did. That's only half my head there. Yeah, and that's Woody Bray. That's my coach.
That's him. Yeah.
He's
So
a
I know
Samo High guy.
this would have been the year right before. Which one's Woody over here? Or
No,
over
right over here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
We interrupt this podcast to bring you a commercial. And now back to our interview.
So you do quite well in a number of sports. So you played baseball. Did you run track as well?
I did.
So you found a way to manage all four?
I ran a leg on the relay team.
Okay.
So before I started having serious orthopedic issues from football, I could really move quite well. I've had 6 knee operations.
Oof.
So
Yeah.
before my first knee operation, I was pretty quick. I ran on the relay team, and I ran the 440,
Okay.
which is a death march.
Yeah, it is.
And I threw the shot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So as a matter of fact, I ended up doing really well in CIF my senior year, throwing the shot. And the reason was Woody Bay and these guys that I was talking about, my coach, went to Selma High, and they had a guy that was in their class by the name of Perry O'Brien.
Okay.
He happened to have thrown the shot in four Olympics and world champions.
O'Brien, yeah.
And so one day they talked him into coming over and helping me out a little
Showing
bit.
you how to.
And so that's my senior year, and so I'm going to USC on a football scholarship. And one of the things I didn't play football my senior year because I was badly injured the last game of my junior year.
Didn't realize
so
that.
I was not allowed to play. So I played basketball and I ran track and stuff, but I still started working out. I started lifting weights and doing that stuff when nobody was doing that.
Sure.
The only guys were doing it were Muscle Beach and other places.
I was going to say that wasn't common.
Yes.
But they thought it would mess you up for sports.
Right. And so the combination of lifting weights and this kind of stuff, and then Perry O'Brien, first thing he does to me, he says, "Well, tell me what you're doing now," because we had finished league and we were going into CIS. He says, "Okay, to begin with, what you're going to do for just the next couple weeks is you're going to stop lifting weights."
That's going to be that.
And so we went to the league finals. I stopped lifting weights the week before. I threw like 5 or 6 feet further because my body was just better rested. And I didn't need it because I was stuffed.
Okay.
And so I ended up running track and having a great time doing that. And once again, where we practice for Memorial
Sure.
on Olympic.
Sure.
You know how we didn't have a track. So we ran around the infield, we ran around the baseball diamonds.
The four baseball
Yeah, he had a clock on us, so we made do.
How did you, especially your junior, sophomore years or whatever, how did you balance 4 sports? That seems, or was that just always part of your life? Sports and academics.
I actually think, and I think most people figure this out, is if you, the more free time you have, the more trouble you get in. So you can fit it all in,
Yep.
And I really learned a lesson because the schools that I kind of aspired to go to, UCLA, SC, and really Notre Dame. And then I had also an inkling about going to the Ivies because my dad's brother was a well-known football player at Dartmouth.
Oh, okay, sure.
They grew up in Chicago, and as a matter of fact, in those days, it's a great story because they hired, it was New Trier High School, which is in Evanston, Illinois, famous high school in this country. And they hired his coach to become the head coach at Dartmouth, and 14 guys went to Dartmouth all in the same year. Different standards in those days.
I was going to say.
So I heard the coach's name was Bob Blackman when I was coming out of high school, and when I was a sophomore, he started recruiting in the Western United States. And so I had an uncle that played. I had this guy that was talking to me, and so I started
coming out west.
Yeah, I started looking at that, and the standards for the Ivies were a little bit higher than some West Coast out here. So I knew I had to be serious if I really wanted to consider that. But
that was always on your mind. Was it always on your mind?
Yeah, a little bit.
To play at a high level school.
Until when the push came to shove, and I needed to really select, and I think the people that were really advising me were saying, if you can go to Notre Dame and you can go to SC or UCLA out here, and you want to stay out here, you ought to be thinking about staying here.
Besides those 3, did anybody else recruit you? A few others?
Washington, the University of Washington. As a matter of fact, the University of Washington. I'm a senior. Of course, now my grandkids and stuff are getting recruited. They go on trips. I don't know. I don't understand the rules, frankly.
Yeah.
But you didn't go on a trip until you were a senior. And
okay.
Yeah. So.
And you'd even go on trips like
You got to go on 3 recruiting trips.
Okay.
So I went to Washington, I went to SC, and I went to Notre Dame. And when I went to Washington, one of the things that it's the first time, by the way, it's the first time I'd ever flown on an airplane. I'm a senior.
What was up to Seattle?
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, that's kind of how
It's
simple
exciting
things
though,
were in
right?
those days. Yeah, I flew to Notre Dame, flew into O'Hare, and got on a little DC-3 and flew into South Bend. Yeah, and then I went down to. I actually one of the things that UCLA, it was Tommy Prothro that was doing,
at the time.
and John McKay at USC. One of the things that they did at UCLA that kind of intrigued me was that they had John Wooden call me a couple times and let me know that I would be very welcome to play basketball. So if you think about that team, so I ended up going to SC, and that was great. I wouldn't choose, but guess who?
Alcindor, Lucius Allen,
Kenny Heights, Lynn Shackelford,
and Shaq. Wow.
Yeah, so that would have been place someplace for me. So I ended up going to SC and playing on a national championship football team,
Yes,
and
you
I could have gone the other way and maybe hung around.
It was a pumping time in LA for the colleges. I mean, SC, UCLA were always competitive. Was Notre Dame at the time? Would that have been Frank Leahy?
Notre Dame had just won.
Who was their coach then?
With Jack Snow and that whole group.
Yeah.
John Ewart. They had just
won
Parsegian had just come on.
Parsegian, that's who it was. Yeah.
And frankly, the person that was the most influential about helping me decide where I was going to end up going is that. So my dad grew up in Chicago, went to Newt Rockney's summer camp. So he was so gaga Notre Dame.
All about Notre Dame.
He was not the right person to be helping me decide. But the guy that really helped me the most was the principal at St. Monica's.
Who was the principal then?
Father Belford.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So
I know him.
He called me in, closed the door, and he goes, "This for a priest, this is kind of sacrilegious for me to be doing this." But he goes, "Look, what do you want to do when you get out of school?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a businessman." He goes, "Where do you want to live?" I said, "Southern California." He goes, "Go to SC." And so, and the part of the other reason is my wife Joanne. We grew up together.
Sure.
That had been a long.
That'd have been tough.
And the way it worked out, she went to school Dominican College in San Rafael, and I'm down here. And we were together a lot more than we were apart.
I would think that's against the vows of a priest. They're supposed to all push Notre Dame.
Yes, they were.
they take that.
I really thanked him for that because it really kind of helped me. Helped me focus.
Yeah,
on
Brunsford ended up eventually over St. Bernard when I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's been around. He'd been around a while. So you end up at SC. Besides John McKay recruiting you, did anybody who else came? Did anybody come to the house? Did they?
So the guy that was really great with my parents was Tommy Prothro. Very cordial, very slow talking, and just loved to sit and chew the fat with my parents. Came to the house a couple times. I don't know if you remember Johnny Spratt's Back Rack.
I've heard
it
that
was
name.
on.
Yeah.
It's the Wilshire Restaurant in Santa Monica.
Sure.
Like on 23rd, 24th Street. That was where he did all of his recruiting. Just like Julie's down at USC is where John McKay did. That's where Tommy Prothro did all of his recruiting. So had a couple meals with the coach. And so Tommy Prothro, I turned him down there. And then I get drafted by the Rams. And guess who ends up being my coach?
That's
Tommy
him.
Prothro.
Isn't that fun?
Yeah, and
Comes around.
And he really was. It was great for me. He was a character of a guy. You probably can see him with his little hat on.
Bigger than life guy.
Always carrying a briefcase and a Coke in the other hand, and unusual man.
You at USC, I dug in and found this picture, which is
okay. That is
brilliant.
I got that ball.
You did?
Yeah, I got that ball.
Some newspaper said that Alcindor outreached you.
Yeah, he didn't. He wouldn't go down on the ground to get the ball. Went down on the ground to get the ball.
That is brilliant.
I'll tell you another story. I'll tell you another story.
Yeah.
You know Roy Firestone?
Sure.
Okay. This is about maybe 6 or 7 years ago. My son-in-law is Adam Keefe, who played professional basketball. And so he's watching the Roy Firestone show. And and Lou Alcindor is on. Excuse me.
At that time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. At this time, he's Lou Alcindor,
So, so Kareem's on there. And so Roy asked him a question. He says, by the way, who's the dirtiest player that you ever played with?
Dirtiest? Okay.
Dirtiest. He said, a guy from SC, Bob Klein. Can you imagine that? All those years later, I made that impression upon that guy.
I love that.
Well, there was,
and I got a feeling you were physical.
I was not dirty. I'm not. Yeah. I don't have that in me. I'm just not.
I got a feeling it was physical.
But the ball's down on the ground. It's my ball just as much as it's your ball.
Is. And I know you've been listed at 6'5", 235, but you look closer to 250 here. You look strong there.
Yeah, I was maybe 240.
Wow.
But Coach Mulligan, who was the freshman coach at the time, said, you got to get a different game for this guy because you're not going to be able that shot you just tried to take. It's going to come back down. You're going to eat the ball, right? Right. So we played a little differently. That was the year that the freshmen beat the varsity. Absolutely. In the inter-squad game.
For those who don't know, it was a two-time defending champion UCLA Bruins come to play the freshmen to open Pauley Pavilion.
Yep.
And Lou Alcindor and company beat them by like 20.
And it was the year that had just opened. It was the first season.
And they just opened, yeah.
Just playing.
How did you play? I know on offense, I think you guys stalled to try to work the clock a little bit, but how did you defend the greatest scorer in the history of basketball?
Just leaned into him a little.
Did you just try to beat him to a spot?
Yeah, I mean, what are
you gonna do?
If he holds the ball up, you hold the ball higher and you can jump. And it's fantastic. But I have good memories of that part.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because he remembers me.
Thanks for watching and listening. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is produced by me, Marley Rice, and Christine Jinbo. Directed by Chris M. Alport, with studio support from Alpha Command Unit, and shot by bad boy Bobby McCall. Original music courtesy of Lennon Music Production, and original images courtesy of Sienna Lennon Photography. A big thank you to all of our contributors of the show. Sports Stories with Denny Lennon is a production of Sports Stories, Inc., and available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, YouTube, or wherever you watch and listen. Make sure you press that subscribe button, give us a review, leave a comment. It will really help us grow the show. And you know what else will help us grow the show? Head on over to patreon.com/Denny Lennon to get some never-before-seen videos, pictures, interviews, and so much more. We are all over social media and constantly sending out clips on Facebook, conducting fun polls on Twitter, going live on Instagram, and more. To find all of our social media links, hustle on over to sportstoriesdl.com. SSDL proudly supports the My Stuff Bags Foundation and the Heroes Movement. Links to how you can support and help these foundations can be found on our website. We also want to give a big thank you to all of our partners of the show. So, as Coach Lennon would say, any questions, comments, or concerns, you can email me, Marley, at info@sportsstoriespodcast.com. We want to thank all of our followers and listeners, and we will see you next time.
I get up and nothing keeps me down. I got it tough. Sports Stories toughest around. Oh, can you see me here? I got my back against spaghetti. All Sports Stories, all that I see. Well, I might as well jump. Yeah, I might as well jump. Go ahead and jump. I might as well jump.
Kick it out, Book.